Inside the secret chamber, Han Li shuddered slightly as he found himself back in the real world once again. As the translucent wall of light gradually faded, the Eye of Truth on the mantra-treasured axis also slowly closed, and Han Li swept a sleeve through the air to stow the axis away, along with the clear time vial and the illusory dawn San Si. A contemplative look then appeared on his face as he summoned his Dragon 5 mask, and he released a series of missions in the Transient Guild interface, searching for the ingredients required to refine the medicinal fluid for the infernal devilish eyes. After releasing all of the missions, a floral pattern appeared over the index and middle fingers of his right hand, following which a burst of silver light shot forth to create a silver door of light that was around 10 feet tall in front of him. He made his way into the flower branch space through the door and arrived directly outside his spirit medicine garden. The garden was filled with abundant spiritual chi, and around a dozen giant ape puppets were busy at work, having expanded the garden even further. Han Li slowly made his way into the garden, and he noticed that most of the spirit plants had already grown accustomed to their new environment, while only a small number of them were looking a little withered and unhealthy. He called upon one of the giant ape puppets, then gave it a jade vial and instructed it to water those slightly withered spirit plants with the spirit liquid inside the vial once every 15 days. After that, Han Li made his way to the section of the garden where the farsight weeds were planted. At this point, all of them had been matured to tens of thousands of years old, so they were fit to be used. However, according to the infernal devilish eye's secret technique, when it came to many of the ingredients used in the medicinal fluid, the older they were, the more efficacious they would be. With that in mind, Han Li removed the heaven-controlling vial from around his neck, then tipped it upside down above the farsight weeds. A drop of green spirit liquid flowed out of the opening of the vial, and as it began to descend, Han Li flicked a finger in its direction, causing it to explode into a small cloud of mist that sprayed down evenly upon all of the farsight weeds. Han Li watched for a moment as the spirit liquid fell upon the farsight weeds, then continued deeper into the medicine garden. In a corner of the garden near the back was a plot of dark purple spirit soil that resembled mud from a swamp. The Tao warrior primary beans growing inside were coming along quite nicely, and the entire area was enshrouded within a cloud of purple mist, giving it a rather indistinct appearance. However, Han Li could tell from their auras that the primary beans were growing just fine. Beyond this point in the spirit garden was a more recently expanded area, and even though it had already been watered with spirit liquid, it was still looking rather barren as nothing had been planted there. All of a sudden, a voice rang out nearby. "Can I offer you a piece of advice, fellow Taoist Han?" Han Li turned to discover Mo Guang making his way toward him, and he nodded in response. "Go ahead, fellow Taoist Mo Guang. The world's origin chi is able to circulate within this domain treasure, but it's ultimately still limited and can't quite compare with the outside world. Hence, if you plant too many things in here and exceed the limits of what this space can tolerate, that could result in spiritual chi failure, leading to the demise of this space," Mo Guang said. "I've already considered that. I came here on this occasion to bolster the restrictions within the domain," Han Li replied with a nod. "In that case, it seems that my advice was unwarranted," Mo Guang said with a smile. "Not at all, fellow Taoist Mo Guang. I appreciate you looking out for me. I managed to expel some baleful chi from my body and collect it, and I was planning to go to the bamboo pavilion to give it to you. But you've saved me the trouble," Han Li said as he tossed a black storage pouch through the air. Mo Guang caught the storage pouch, and a hint of surprise appeared on his face as he inspected its contents. "You have my thanks, fellow Taoist Han." "Don't worry about it," Han Li said with a dismissive wave of his hand. "Let's go to the bamboo pavilion." The two of them made their way to the pond in front of the purple bamboo pavilion, and Mo Guang entered the pavilion to continue his cultivation. Meanwhile, Han Li walked a couple of laps around the pond, tossing some round stones that were riddled with array patterns into the pond at strategic locations. After all of the stones were deposited, he flipped a hand over to produce an azure bamboo cloud swarm sword, then carefully began marking the ground around the pond, injecting immortal spiritual power and sword chi into the ground with every single stroke. Before long, a massive and complex array had taken shape around the pond, and Han Li exhaled as he stowed his sword away upon seeing this. Immediately thereafter, a mid-grade immortal origin stone appeared in his hand. He gripped the stone tightly in his hand with a pained look in his eyes. But ultimately, he made his decision and tossed the immortal origin stone into the pond, where it vanished into the water beneath the purplish golden lotus flower. Immediately thereafter, the water in the pond was stirred up into a frenzy, and one huge bubble after another emerged from beneath the lotus flower before popping in succession. Bursts of dense purple mist emerged from the popped bubbles, permeating over the entire pond and inundating the arched bamboo bridge sitting over the pond. Han Li felt an invisible breeze rise up from the center of the pond before sweeping through the air in all directions, releasing abundant spiritual chi that instantly struck him with a sense of relaxation and comfort. After standing beside the pond for a moment, Han Li suddenly vanished from the spot. Almost in the exact same instant, he appeared elsewhere in the domain, then flipped a hand over to produce an array plate that he had refined earlier. After installing some normal immortal origin stones into the array plate, he buried it deep in the ground. After that, he continued to make his way throughout the domain before burying more array plates that were fitted with immortal origin stones. By the time all of the array plates were planted, it was as if the domain had become a giant go board, and a metallic clang rang out as all of the array plates were activated in unison, sending pillars of light erupting into the sky. At the center of the pond near the purple bamboo pavilion, the lotus flower lit up, and a fist-sized flower bud suddenly emerged beside it before blooming as well. Very impressive, fellow Taoist Han. You've sacrificed a mid-grade immortal origin stone to produce another lotus flower, and now you won't have to worry about this domain running out of spiritual chi for at least the next century. Mo Guang praised as he stood in front of a window on the second floor of the bamboo pavilion. A faint smile appeared on Han Li's face upon hearing this, and he was quite pleased with his work. A few minutes later, all of the phenomena taking place within the domain subsided, and Han Li examined the entire space to ensure that nothing was amiss before returning to his secret chamber. By the time he emerged from the flower branch domain, it was already very late at night, and a beam of moonlight was shining down upon the ground in front of him through the hole in the ceiling above. Han Li pulled out his heaven-controlling vial before setting it down under the moonlight. Over 30 years flew by in a flash in the Leisure Valley, and nothing really changed throughout the years. During this time, Han Li purchased various ingredients for the medicinal liquid from the Transient Guild, then planted them in his spirit medicine garden, before maturing them with the spirit liquid from the heaven-controlling vial. At this point, the primary ingredients required to refine the medicinal fluid had already been matured to a far more advanced age than the minimum threshold stipulated in the secret technique. So the medicinal fluid that he was able to refine was far more efficacious than normal. At this moment, he was meditating with his eyes closed in his secret chamber. On the stroke of midnight, all of the lamps in his secret chamber were suddenly snuffed out, plunging the room into complete darkness, with the exception of the beam of moonlight coming through the hole in the ceiling. Placed under the moonlight in front of Han Li was a clay vase with a large mouth, but a thin neck, inside of which was some translucent purple liquid that was shimmering incessantly. Right at this moment, Han Li's eyes suddenly sprang open, and a burst of bright blue light flashed through them. At the same time, a layer of purplish golden scales emerged over his skin, and the immense immortal spiritual power was being converted into inky black devilish chi before surging out of the gaps between his scales. He began chanting the infernal devilish eyes mantra internally while making a string of hand seals, then swept a sleeve over the vase sitting on the ground, and a ball of purple liquid immediately flew out from within before being guided into his eyes. As soon as the liquid made contact with his eyes, Han Li immediately felt a burning pain that struck him with the reflexive urge to close his eyes, but he was able to resist the urge to do so. Cleansing one's eyes with the ready-made medicinal fluid was the first step to cultivating the infernal devilish eyes. And it was also an extremely important step that set the foundation for all of the subsequent steps. Tears began to flow out of Hanli's eyes, carrying with them some tiny impurities that were otherwise undetectable, leaving 2 faint white streaks on his cheeks. Through the cleansing process, the blue light in his eyes had become a little dimmer, but it had also become clearer, while his eyes themselves were becoming rather bloodshot. All of a sudden, he switched to a different hand seal, then flipped his hands upward, raising both index fingers before extending them toward his own eyes.